You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. As always, we bring you the smartest people in the land, and hope you guys are doing well. We just launched a new Facebook group where there's it's actually the group's been there a long time. We just started using the new Facebook chat, if you will. You may have gotten some messenger invites from Facebook to all sorts of groups you belong to going, what the hell is going on? But we figured it'd be a great innovation because we can make it so that people come chat about the show during, after, before, and we could just talk about things in the show, guests that came on and different things. So if you get a chance, subscribe to that. You don't even have to subscribe. You just join up if you're on Facebook. Go to chrisvossfacebook.com. Of course, refer the family show to your everybody you know. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, and Chris Voss one on the tickety-talkety as well. We have an amazing young lady on the show today. She's going to be talking to us about her journey and everything that went into it and all that good stuff. Let's take a look at that. It's Katie Wrigley. She is a transformational coach. How do I pronounce this correctly, Katie? A Cognomovement?
You got it. Yep. Perfect.
Cognomovement practitioner. This is why we do the show, so we can learn new stuff every day. And she's going to be talking to us about all the stuff that she does and how she does it. She is a transformational coach who uses the Cognomovement within her coaching sessions to help her clients transform their trauma and pain. After experiencing her own debilitating pain levels, which rendered her disabled in 2018, she knows firsthand how limiting trauma and pain can be. So she created a system to make it faster and easier to change your state of pain and release the trauma. Using principles taught to her by her wellness coach, coupled with the Cognomovement and extensive research around how pain is created in the body, she's now developed a unique method that allows fast relief from symptoms of chronic conditions by tapping into the nervous system through the physical body. Welcome to the show, Katie. How are you?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
KatieWrigley.com.
There you go. So, Katie, give us a 30,000 overview of what this Cognomovement is. We're learning new words today, and how you apply it and how you do your work.
So, Cognomovement uses this ball for those who are watching and not just listening. For those listening, it looks like a psychedelic-looking soccer ball.
Oh, wow.
It is purposely designed, though. So, the brain, the left side of the brain, lights up at these complex shapes and the bright colors. The right side lights up and activates because it's a 3D object. Mm-hmm. So through a bunch of body movements and eye movements, we start to shift energy low to high, and we go deep into the neurology. And as we're doing that, because of the way we're moving and a bunch of the different principles that are within Cognomovement, there's a lot of NLP, EFT, there's EMDR. I've heard it called EMDR and crack for people who have done both. It uses those principles plus its own modality and its own uniqueness on top of that. And we actually activate all three learning centers in the body: auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. So what this means is, as we're creating a new neural pathway, which happens anytime we're learning something new, the body can automatically reorganize itself under that new neural pathway much faster and easier, and pretty much just goes. It's incredible what can happen just in one session.
That is pretty freaking awesome. And so people can, we talk a lot about trauma on this show, childhood trauma. There seems to be a lot of it. There's, different things like, PTSD and all sorts of other things that can happen to people, that can traumatize them. And so by using that, you can help people, maybe overcome it better, faster, etc.
Yep, absolutely. So I was introduced to Cognomovement when I was awaiting neurosurgery on my back. I never actually had to have that surgery.
Oh, wow.
And I was actually told I was going to need 3 surgeries total. I haven't had any of them.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm able to sleep again. I'm able to have a normal functioning life. My relationships look better. So I'm proof of how well this works. And I have several clients who are proof as well. And then the creators, of course, Bill McKenna and Liz Larson, the things that they're doing at their level are just, it's nothing short of miracles. It's absolutely blows my mind on a daily basis, Chris. Like, what can happen from a psychedelic looking soccer ball when utilized properly?
It almost reminds me of what was that ball from the Mel or the Tom Hanks movie?
Listen,
The Wilson. It's like a Wilson ball. There you go. So what got you into this realm? Tell us a little about your journey and what got you into coaching for this.
so I was in corporate for 24 some odd years, and somewhere in there, I got introduced to this incredible little boy who had a brain tumor. I was a skydiver at the time. Long story short, our drop zone became the first drop zone to legally, keyword, get the kid into the air without the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And that process made me realize, like, and I was in cybersecurity when I was in corporate, great, I can clean out someone's inbox, but I wasn't touching people deeply enough. And I don't mean that in a perverted way, but I wasn't touching people deeply enough to feel like that was a fulfilling enough job for me. So I started to look into coaching, and then through my own life experience, wound up specializing in pain and trauma as I got in my own mess that I had created in my own life, series of really bad decisions that culminated over years. And actually, it all stemmed from an early childhood trauma and my denial of that trauma for 40 years. So I had a hell of a mess to clean up by the time I started facing it. So I learned a lot fast. And now I can turn around and I can help other people who have gotten themselves into similar situations to be able to get out a lot faster as well.
That's definitely key. That's definitely key. So, when trauma releases, does it take a lot of sessions? Is it something where do people need to use the ball, buy the ball, and utilize it?
It depends. So we can shift a lot in one session. If you have a long-standing trauma, and I work with first responders, I work with veterans, there's going to be layers when you're talking about people who are in chronic stress, chronic traumatic situations. Like the stats that first responders go through are just off the hook. It's like 500 to 1,000 traumatic events just in their career. That doesn't count what happens in their personal life. So when you get into a situation like that, we're not going to wipe that out in one session. So we tend to take it at whatever pace that person wants to go, depending on what their nervous system can handle. And I work from there, but it is usually more than one session. I do teach people how to do this on their own. I have a YouTube channel so they can do mini sessions when I can't have a session with them. So I don't want people to think they need me forever. They only need me for a temporary amount of time, and then they can do this on their own to continue to maintain their wellness and their health going forth without my interference.
There you go. It's something that people suffer from. You say it helps with fibromyalgia, CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome, slipped and bulging discs, and unrelenting chronic nerve pain and weakness in limbs. So are all these different things? I never heard of complex regional pain syndrome, CRPS. Tell us about that, and I guess how trauma turns into pain in the body and translates into pain in the body.
That's a good question. So I want to be clear with my wording. It's symptoms of fibromyalgia, symptoms of CRPS.
Okay.
There's very specific guidelines on how to mention that from my own perspective on there. So complex regional pain syndrome, I was diagnosed with that myself after a knee replacement. And what it basically means is that one limb or your whole body, depending on how severe it is, has become hyperreactive to pain. It changes colors. It gets to a point where it can't even really handle touch. Like there was one point where if someone had grabbed me too hard, like I would be bruised, and they hadn't actually impacted me all that much in there. The body is always talking and it's always giving us messages. So one of the biggest mindset shifts that we can do is to start to look at pain, not as punishment, not as the end game, not as something you have to put up with, but as messages from your body. So all of those events that we experience, only 10% of the brain is actually conscious. The other 90% is below the surface. So until you feel all that crap that's under the surface, your body can manifest that in an experience of physical pain. It can manifest it in an autoimmune disease. It can manifest it in some other kind of chronic condition. And so until those emotions are felt, they're dealt with, the body knows you're listening, and the subconscious trusts you enough to let go of the pain signal, it can come up as pain, chronic pain, unrelenting fibromyalgia, all of those other things in there that can be incredibly difficult to live with day to day.
Definitely. It's interesting how the pain translates into or trauma and mental issues translate into the body. And like you said, using it as a signal for, hey, something's maybe wrong. A lot of times, we've talked about this on the show, a lot of times doctors kind of treat the pain part and they just go, oh, here's take 2 aspirin and fix me and call me in the morning. And while that may take care of the immediate pain, or I think a lot of aspirin just basically turns off your receptors to where you're just not feeling it anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
right.
But basically, the pain's still there, and until you fix the underlying issue that's causing the pain, it's kind of like if you keep stepping on a nail. Sure, you can take 2 aspirin, but if you keep stepping on the nail, you're still gonna have a problem. You got to quit stepping on the nail or whatever is creating the pain in your body. In a crude sort of illustration there.
That's a really great analogy, actually. And
I just made it up. So
it's a pretty good one. And you're right. And so when we take something like Advil or Tylenol or something like that, we're not actually treating it. Like, yes, there could be an anti-inflammatory effect temporarily. There's some data that supports that every time we take something like that, we actually delay the body's own natural healing by about 50%. I don't know those sources off the top of my head, but I've come across that in my research in there. And you're right. It's getting to that root issue of what's in there. That's where we dissolve it for good. Like, it would have been really easy for me to say I was just a bad skydiver, because I was. That was the short story. But things would have lined up differently. And if it had only been physical, then all of the things that I was doing to fix it physically would have worked, versus nothing working and running out of options. And then me going, okay, this sucks. I'm looking down a life of disability. I don't have very much energy. This is not going to scale for another 30, 40 years. I have to figure something else out. And thank God I found a coach that was just absolutely incredible. And one of the first things she did was plant a seed that we all have what we need within ourselves already to heal. Wow. It's just a matter of learning how to tap into it and going that course. And it takes longer to go that course than it does to take some Advil, but you're going to get longer healing when you're willing to start to learn to talk to your body, understand the messages it's giving you, and release those pain signals.
Learning to listen to your body as opposed to just kind of trying to remedy or kind of medicate the results you're getting can probably make all the difference in your life. When you say it's fast for Cognomovement, what's that in comparison to? Like maybe just going and seeing a therapist and being like, well, who hurt you? Why didn't your mom love you enough?
Well, it's faster than any other modality I've heard of so far. That doesn't mean something else may not do that, but this goes deeper than anything else I know. We're going directly into the neurology. Typically, someone is focusing on a physical sensation and they can unravel it pretty quickly. So I've used EFT as a modality. I've had faster response with Cognomovement. I did talk therapy for 13 years.
Oh, wow.
That did very, very little other than teach me how to tell stories really well. It didn't touch anything. It was once I got into the coaching side, once I got into Cognomovement, then I started to move the stuff I went to therapy for 13 years. So it's, and any time that you're going deep into the body and you're talking to the body, it's going to be faster than sitting there with talk therapy. And a lot of talk therapy, depending on the style, can actually keep the person stuck in the trauma.
Oh, wow.
And so every time they go in there, whenever you're telling a story again, your brain goes back into it like you're in it right now. So that can continue to re-trigger you. If you don't have a therapist that knows how to move you forward, who's not trauma informed, you could wind up stuck there and just inadvertently re-traumatizing yourself week after week every time you see this therapist. And that's where things like EMDR started to come from. That's where things like Cognomovement started to come out of as well, is finding other ways to be able to break that apart with different like bilateral movements, different pieces like that we incorporate in there. Movement is a huge way that we have available to all of us to be able to get trauma out of the body.
Yeah, it's really wild how, I've even seen people that if they have sadness, where a child dies and they go into massive depression and they die of cancer 3 to 6 months later. And it's interesting how we can take stuff and turn into sickness in our body and have an effect and store it there, I guess. Or it really comes down to it.
Absolutely. And I actually worked with a father who had unfortunately lost a young child in a fluke accident, and had the honor of being able to help him smile again and experience joy again, and be able to reconnect with his daughter that was still alive and his wife again. So that was incredible to get to have that experience. Not that he had, it was awful what he went through, but to be able to be a part of facilitating someone being able to experience joy again. I think that's one of the clients that I'm the most proud of being a part of, because it made such a huge impact in his life. And it was, like I said, such an honor to be able to be that person to help him move forward from that horrible, horrible accident.
There you go. It's you see so many people that have some of these ailments, and it's interesting to know that there's pain stored in the body, complex regional pain syndrome. So I guess people just kind of store this wherever I don't know, it remedies itself, or it finds itself, I guess. What makes chronic pain so complex? Why is it complex?
Because it's not just the physical. There's going to be emotional pieces in there too. So the way that pain is created, we have receptors all over our body, and it's coming up to the brain. And so that path between where the receptors are reporting pain in that brain, that starts to get kind of worn down. So it actually impacts the gray matter in your brain, and you lose 11% of the gray matter when you've been in pain. And chronic pain is defined as unrelenting for 3 to 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So you've been in pain for a decade, you've probably lost 11% of the gray matter in your head. That's going to equate to 10 to 20 years of aging.
Wow.
So you've got the subconscious mind, you've got the unconscious mind. It takes a while for the subconscious mind to trust that it can let go of that pain signal. Like, I have one client whose subconscious mind doesn't trust her to be healthy yet.
Wow.
And so anytime she starts a new treatment, 2 to 3 days later, her body doubles down and levels her again. And so she's found what works for her is a mix of homeopathy and Cognomovement. And I've created a couple of videos, especially for her, that she uses as a mantra. And she had reported back that it was starting to help her feel like herself again after some of the things that she's experienced. And it's because of that emotional component in there. And traditional medicine or modern medicine doesn't really touch on that. It's here are the pharmaceuticals, and here, why don't we throw in an antidepressant so that you feel better mentally? Because when your mood goes up, your pain will go down. I understand why they do that, but we're still just cranking it up pharmaceutically. We're not getting to the root and having that person actually feel better through natural means, like time in the sun, like taking healthier supplements, like walking in nature if they're able to walk. Little things like that can really give a big boost. Watching comedy, watching your podcast is going to help people actually start to feel better when they're laughing, because it's going to be inducing all these hormones in their head.
Yeah.
And
we give us something to laugh at, because otherwise the rest of the show is just painful to watch. If you watch the YouTube version of me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not that painful to watch.
I agree. I love your show.
Oh, thank you. Flattery will get you everywhere. So this is really interesting. We've talked a lot about trauma over the years, PTSD, people storing their issues. Have you found that using the ball in this cognitive movement sort of way, that you can like people, some people have kind of hidden trauma, like maybe they've blocked out stuff from childhood and stuff like that. In fact, we had someone on who was talking about trauma recently, and they said one of the reasons people bury their trauma or hide it or kind of mask it from their memory is their body can't deal with it at that time and place. And then when they reach an age to where they can deal with it again, or they're kind of adult enough and their body, their memory or their brain or whoever's in charge there says, hey, I think you can handle this now. Why don't you try this on for size? And it brings back those kind of repressed memories. Do you find that maybe this sort of modality helps with that?
It helps to find things for sure. So I actually finally faced my trauma in a psychedelic ceremony like a year and a half or so before I was introduced to Cognomovement. But I have continued to find pieces of it that I had forgotten with the ball. So there's with the eye movement piece, like we're really cranking those eyes in positions we literally never have them in. And that's accessing place cells in the brain that are storing all these memories that are connected to these sensations in your body. So your subconscious has recorded every single thing that has happened to you from the time that you were conscious in your mother's womb up until today.
Wow.
You're only conscious of 10%. Even the things that you do every day, they are led by these patterns. A lot of times that happened to us as a kid. Something as innocuous as your sibling gets a popsicle and you didn't can actually read into I'm not lovable enough and set off a slew of bad decisions in your dating life.
Wow.
Like it can be that small. And we have no way to remember that. We aren't just going to sit there and be like, okay, what happened to me when I was 6? And then you review the year 6 without any help to walk you through that and help connect it. You're not just going to go back to the age 6 and walk through that timeline consciously. None of us have that ability to do that unless maybe you're 6.
Unless you get a time machine, right?
Right. Yeah. If we had a time machine, of course. But we never know how these patterns are going to show up. And it's only once we get into the pattern, which is what we're looking at with Cognomovement, that's like, oh, that's where that came from. And then now it's like, okay, do I want to keep this or do I want to get rid of it? And most of the time we want to get rid of it. Yeah. It's amazing. We're so resilient as beings that and it's never conscious, and it's usually not rational or logical, these patterns either. Like no one actually wants to continue to get in their own way to find a life partner. No one consciously wants to do that. That's coming from something that's making you take actions that's going to prevent that from being something you have in your life.
There you go. Identifying this stuff and unburying it, and this explains kind of why people are stuck in. What would you call it? They're stuck in therapy for years. You're like, you've been in therapy for like 10 years. Do you? When are you going to get out? Right. People are like, when do you get out of there? Is there a time where you're over it? And, and this kind of tells, what people can do. So when people work with you, how do you help them? How do people reach out to you and onboard with you, and go through the process, I guess? So
I like to have a call first. So I do 45-minute virtual chats and get very clear on what are the biggest problems right now. How big of a problem is it for that person? Really spend a lot of time listening. What are they aware of? What are they not aware of? I can pick up on a lot on that call. Figure out like what are their energy levels. Everybody's nervous system is going to be different. Some people you can really push. Others cannot be pushed. Like the client I mentioned who does homeopathy and Cognomovement, she cannot be pushed. She needs to go at a much slower pace. That's what her nervous system can handle. So, and sometimes it takes a session or two for me to figure it out. But so far, intuitively, I've been able to say, okay, I think this is how many sessions you need. We start walking through that. I can work in person if they're in the state of Maine, or I can work virtually. And we go through it together and we touch base all the time. So I check in the day after a session. I make myself available in between sessions. And we continue to go down that path. We get very clear on what the problems are, how big they are, like I said, and we continue to monitor that progress over time and measure the after effect. How helpful was this? What things have changed in your life? Like, for instance, there is an officer that I work with who comes in to do what he calls tune-ups sometimes. Oh, really? And one of the things that he reported to me was he started to dream again since he started to work with me. And that's one of the signs of trauma is when you stop dreaming or you have recurring nightmares or insomnia. Those can all be symptoms that are pointing to something really disturbing your subconscious that's not allowing you to sleep. And so, yeah, it's little things like that, like, oh, maybe there's something bothering
signals.
me.
Yeah.
Yes. lots of signals. And it could be something else. Like I've exhausted all of the things physically, and turns out I've got an environmental issue that I'm going to be dealing with as well.
Oh, wow.
Because of all the work I've done, I'm sleeping between 7 and 8 hours a night every night. I'm highly functional. I have high amounts of energy. It's just not sustainable outside of what I need to do. And so, but now it makes sense. Like, oh, I've got a whole bunch of crap in my house that's trying to make me sick. Like, good job, body, that you didn't get there. But yeah. But there's always indicators there. It's that we tend not to look at it like anxiety. Is that a diagnosis or is it a symptom?
You know, and it sounds like you spend a lot of time helping people listen to their body more than just trying to, you know, placate it with some drugs and be like, hey, here's some aspirin or some vodka, or, you know, where the case is. Have fun with that. Just deal with it. It sounds like you really help people get down into the depths of it, where they can see more of what's going on and listen to our bodies more. And that's really what we should do more of. I mean, we kind of ignore so much stuff. We just go, okay, whatever, deal with it, blah, blah, blah.
Yep. Well, that's what we're told to do. I mean, how many times as kids, especially in Gen X, were we told to suck it up or rub some dirt on it and keep going?
Yeah, that's pretty much my whole life story right there.
Right. That's most of us, especially in Gen X. Like, that's what we were told. We weren't stopped to go, hey, you know, maybe the fact that you continue to have anxiety, hey, maybe there's something going on that you're having trouble facing. And it's always amazes me. Like when I start to feel that myself, it's like, all right, I know I've got something here I don't want to face. And I know that I'm going to feel so much better on the other side of it. And so I'll explore it and break it apart, because I'd much rather be able to face whatever's there. No one is going to lose their mind or make some irreversible act because they face their stuff. It's the resistance to it and the fear around it. That's the stuff that drives us crazy. That's the stuff that drives people to do things that they can't take back. When you face it, I don't know one person who's faced their stuff and been worse off for it. Like, I literally can't name anyone. I know a lot of people doing this work.
Well, I've referenced this a lot in the thing. I remember watching Leaving Neverland with and it was a movie about Michael Jackson and some young boys. And I remember after there was a show with Oprah, and there was a guy who stood up and talked. He'd been molested by a police officer in his town. I think he was an ex-NFL star. And he talked about how he'd kind of hidden away for so many years. It became a poison inside of him, and a secret that he was holding. And the secret he basically referenced was the poison that killed him, or was killing him. And until he released it and got it out, talked about it, and owned it, and said, hey, this happened to me, I was a victim. It was toxifying inside him, and everything way that he would take to try and medicate for it. And so when he finally spoke his truth, if that's the right term, he found that he could finally heal. And so I think you're right. I think, you know, when we keep these toxins inside of us, they fester and they find ways of hiding inside the body and turning into these ugliness things. And until we release them, it's like a poison inside of you. It is.
It is. And there can be so much shame that's wrapped up in early childhood sexual abuse, because the abusers tend to do something to make it even scarier or worse for you to be carrying that. Being able to share your story and face that is one of the most badass, courageous things anybody can do. Making sure you're sharing it with someone who is safe, that you trust, because it can do more damage if you finally have the courage to tell your story and it is someone who wants to one-up you on a trauma. I actually had that happen to me at one point. It was like, oh, nothing happened to you. What happened to me was so much worse. It's like really? Are we really in a competition for whose life sucks more? Like, you can have it. Like, I don't want to be in that game.
There's a lot of victimhood competition in our society going on.
Yeah. And it's a trauma is a trauma is a trauma. They're big T traumas, they're little T traumas. They are all going to impact you. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're strong. It doesn't mean that because it wasn't as bad as what happened to someone else, that it wasn't still bad for you.
It's not a competition. It's like saying, you had one arm cut off, I had two, so I'm far worse and I feel pain and you don't. And you're like, Not really. That's not really the way it works.
No, it's not. Like, of all the places to compete, the trauma arena is not. No, no.
Calm down, people. It's not a competition. There's no gold medal for this. In fact, if anything, the gold medal is when everybody can heal and get better and all that good stuff. What have we touched on? I noticed on your website you've got a lot of different indicators and stuff that can help people maybe know how to listen to their body better, or know if they should reach out to you for help.
Yes. Do you want me to go into those?
You want to tease out some key ones, maybe?
Yeah.
People that are out there listening going, I wonder if I have any of this hidden stuff might help them kind of go, oh, maybe that's what that is.
So we already touched on the sleep, insomnia, not being able to fall asleep or stay asleep, or night terrors. Those tend to be big ones. Not having a dream state, when that's minus taking things at night that make you not dream. That's kind of different. Not being able to sit still. Like, if you're one of those people that's like, I can't meditate, I can't sit still, that may be a sign your nervous system is overactive. Not being able to just sit and watch a TV show or read a book. You have to be doing something else at the same time. That can be another indicator. Chronic pain is another indicator. Constantly anxious or constantly stressed. Like, you may take a normal situation and escalate it immediately, because that's the only thing your mind knows how to do, is to make it worst case scenario, because that's where you feel like you thrive. These can all be indicators that your nervous system is spun up and not functioning optimally for you.
Do you find that maybe, have you tried helping children? I mean, there's a lot of children that have different trauma and they struggle in school because they're overreacting. I was a kid who had ADHD. I had trouble focusing and everything else. Anything like that?
I do, actually. I have several kids that are clients. One has ADD, one has ADHD. Mm-hmm. They're brothers. They've been getting along since I've started to work with them. They're not fighting nearly as much. The grades still kind of ebb and flow depending on how many sessions we've done, but overall grades are higher. The kids are more cooperative. Wow. They're finding it. One of them suddenly said that math is easy, whereas math was his nemesis before. Kids are incredibly easy with Cognomovement, actually. Talk about resilient people, the little miniature versions of us walking the planet out there. Kids are the most resilient. One of my favorite clients is actually 10 years old, and she had hated her mom when she first came in to see me. And now she and her mom are buddy-buddy. They get along great. Her mom got her into a school that's a much better fit for her. She started playing guitar. She wants to have pets that have fur again, because my dog Tangy comes in with me to sessions, and now she's a German Shepherd. And it's another kid I worked with, and this is an example of how fast it can get cleared out. Unfortunately, his father committed suicide. Oh, no. And his mom reported that in 2 sessions, he's back to being a normal kid again.
Oh, wow. Well, that's just, that's awesome, man. Because the one thing about childhood trauma is you can carry it through a lifetime, and you can see, as you go through your whole life, you can see how it's impacted your relationships, your experiences. It can impact your whole life. And sometimes I guess it can end it if you're not careful. Or, I imagine there's a lot of people maybe that are in prison or in other places where, the childhood trauma of what they've gone through is something that's really hurt them. Do you find a lot of, I think it was interesting, you keep referencing first responders. Do you find they suffer from a lot of trauma and stuff, I guess, from what they see? I mean, they don't see all the beautiful things in this world. They see the blood and the guts and some of the horror.
They do. And the way our minds work, what you look for, you'll find. So if you're a police officer, you're constantly looking for the bad guy. Yeah. If you're an EMT, you're looking for things to go wrong. If you're a firefighter, you're looking for the fire. Yeah. You do that enough, you start to get spun up. And I had been asked a lot, like, why did I want to focus on first responders? Because I'm not one myself. I've never been one. I don't have family that is. Mm-hmm. But I know what it's like to sit with trauma in your nervous system unchecked for decades. Yeah. And my nervous system used to be wired so similarly to how theirs are wired that I found that it was really easy to relate to that group. And so that's where I really started to focus. I work with people who have chronic pain as well, who are not first responders, but that group specifically, that's the one that really just seemed to call to me. You know, even a couple weeks ago, people probably saw on the news here that we had a mass shooting in Maine, and it was about 20 miles from my house. Some of the officers I work with were called in on it. There's going to be a ripple effect from that that's going out to everybody, because that's the first time that's happened in Maine. Wow. And so there's innocence lost. There's the people who were at the events that specifically were in close contact with the shooter. There's everybody who was on lockdown. There's so many different levels in there. There's the police who had to clean up the scenes. There's the police who found the shooter. There's the one that spent hours of their time trying to hunt him down before they found him. There's so much that can come out of one situation. And there's also still a stigma to talk about what's wrong or to humanize emotions that are normal for us to feel and allow ourselves to feel when they're faced with those situations. Yeah. So the more people we have talking about this, the less stigma there is, the less shame that's around there, and the less first responders are committing suicide. That is the leading cause of death with first responders right now, is suicide. That is 100% preventable and changeable. Yeah.
Sadly, they said some of the people were so, you know, with these AR-15s and stuff, they're so you can't recognize them, so you have to fingerprint them or DNA or something, because their bodies are so destroyed. And having to witness something like that must just be of a whole new level of horror. I can't imagine. So thank God there are people that stand between us. I remember I had a friend who was doing, he just barely became an EMT ambulance guy right before COVID, and he went into COVID, and he said, you can't believe what this is like and what we find, you know, and especially in New York City, where the services were completely overwhelmed and they weren't finding people till later. And, you know, since no one was showing up to work, people weren't missed. And so they would find people that had passed away for some time. It was just a horror show. And of course, on top of everything else that EMTs deal with. So I imagine there's a lot of stuff that's interesting. I've never really thought about that. We've talked a lot, you know, we've had different military people on the show, talked about what they went through with PTSD in the military and stuff, but never really thought about EMTs. So that's really unique.
Yeah, they're definitely in that. And when you think about it, like, of course they are, right? Like, and I did the same thing, Chris. I hadn't really included them, like, oh, they're in it too. And firefighters, like, I've heard from multiple firefighters, you can't unlearn what it is to, or unsee, right? Yeah. What it is to come across a body that's been burned to death. Like, it's the smells and the sounds that tend to be more haunting than the sights, but the sights certainly don't help. But and I worked with veterans as well too. So it's a lot. And again, it's that same spun up nervous system there that is really, that really starts to be that indicator there. And those things that I mentioned earlier, you know, another one is if you're working out to a point of like almost hurting yourself instead of health reasons because you have to work out, that may be another sign that there's something in your nervous system that's ready to come out.
Well, this has been really insightful. What haven't we talked on or touched on about what you do that I haven't asked you about?
I think you touched on most of it. I did have a freebie that I wanted to offer so people can try this out for themselves. So if you go to katiewrigley.com/Chris Voss, I've got an anxiety hack video out there. Download it. It'll take the edge off. Some of my clients have done this and has said that it's cut their anxiety in half. It's less than 5 minutes. So go grab it, katiewrigley.com/Chris Voss, and grab your free anxiety hack. And it's a couple of principles of Cognomovement without using the ball, but it can just take the edge off right there.
There you go. We'll put that link up on the Chris Voss show. I've gone ahead and saved it there, and people can check it out. It's great that things are out there like this, because like I say, we just placate the pain or medicate the pain, and we don't fix the reason for the pain. We're just kind of like, well, make it go away for a way. I did that with vodka for 20 years. I don't think I was medicating pain. I was having some pretty good fun, and it was a great energy source for when I was younger, where you're just like, hey, I'm tired. I want to work on all these companies I own and go a little bit further. You know, sometimes it was great for Friday and Saturday partying, dating. But, you know, after a while, your body's just like, hey, we're not doing this with you anymore. Like, you could do this when you're 20. You can rebound it, but here's some nice hangovers for you. Boom. And you're just like, this isn't worth it anymore. The trade-off is not worth it. And even then, the damage to your body, I really recommend people. I know I hate to be one of those guys like, you shouldn't drink anymore. People are like, oh, what are you, Mormon? No, I just, seriously, at 55, man, you start feeling the damage and the stuff that you did, and you start feeling the road, man. Those road miles start wearing on you, where you're just like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. So, you feel those road miles right when you get up sometimes, right? It's like, I woke up a couple weeks ago. I'm like, I feel like today is one of those days that I'm feeling the mistakes I made in my 20s.
So there you go. But at least you can deal with the emotional trauma things. You've got the skills to do that. It's just, so the body is, it's a vehicle, man. Yeah, take care of it. That's the point of maybe stop drinking now while you still can, and eat healthy, man. I tell you, I feel so good now, not drinking, eating healthy, doing my intermittent fasting. I went out last night and had a steak, kind of ate some little fatty stuff there, but I had intermittent fasted earlier in the day, and today I'm intermittent fasting again. I think we're 16 or 18 hours in right now in our fast. So, and I feel good. I really do. I really enjoy it, but you've got to get your body into that thing. So Katie, tell people how they can onboard with you one more time, get to know you, reach out, any free consultations or whatever you offer people, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. You can go to katiewrigley.com, and on any page you can schedule a virtual chat. I also have a banner on the top of the page that has my cell phone number on there. You can text me, call me, reach out anytime. We'll get some time on the calendar to talk if I'm not available when you initially reach out. See how I can help you. I'll give you an honest answer, and we'll take it from there. You can also connect me on the socials through the /Chris Voss page as well. So feel free to follow me on socials. I've starting to do some more lighter, funnier posts. So if you're going to follow me on social, this is the time to do it. I'm going to have a bedhead competition picture pretty soon. I want to see some good bedhead coming back.
I could win that. That's the reason we wear the hat, and we're just... I'm always hiding my bedhead hair, but it was funny. I used to have people tell me sometimes when they would see my bed hair in my office, they'd be like, that actually looks fashionable. You actually look like you're cool. You got what the kids do now with the hair going all the way. All you need to do is put some grease in there, or whatever they call it, the gel. And people won't know that's bed hair. They'll just think you're really spiky and cool, like, I don't know, Billy Idol or something. So there you go.
There you go.
But that was back in the drinking days too. It's the drunken bedhead. So I probably could have won that competition one time. So thank you very much, Katie, for coming on. Boy, we sure learned a lot today. I've learned some new terms too. I'm still trying to get it down, the Cognomovement.
You got it.
And there you go. And different ways, but hopefully people can, if you have trauma, folks, please deal with it as soon as possible. Trust me. Don't want to wait 50 years for it, because, look at me. I'm a poster child for it. Thanks, Katie, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me. It's been awesome.
There you go. Thanks, Monis, for tuning in. We couldn't do it without you either. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, the Chris Voss LinkedIn newsletter, the Chris Voss 130,000 group. Subscribe to that over there as well. And go to our new thing we've got, so you can have a chat with me on Facebook at, Chris Voss, Facebook.com. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.